The moment happened so fast that most people missed it. Lieutenant Thomas Ainsworth stood at attention outside Buckingham Palace. His red uniform pristine, his bearskin hat perfectly positioned. It was a Tuesday morning in early spring, and the crowds had gathered for the changing of the guard. Tourists pressed against the black iron gates, cameras ready. Hoping to capture something memorable, they got more than they expected. Queen Camilla's car approached the palace entrance. Protocol was clear. When a member of the royal family passes, the guards salute. It's automatic. It's tradition. It's been done for centuries without question. But Thomas didn't move. His eyes stayed forward. His hand remained at his side. As Camilla's vehicle passed within feet of him, he stood perfectly still, offering nothing. No salute, no acknowledgement. Just silence and stillness. The tourists didn't understand what they were witnessing, but the other guards did. The palace staff did. And somewhere inside that car, Camilla certainly did. 3 minutes later, another vehicle approached. This one carried Prince William, Princess Kate, and their 3 children returning from a school event. As the car slowed near the entrance, something unexpected happened. Princess Charlotte, just 9 years old, looked out the window directly at Thomas. Her small hand came up in a shy wave, and without hesitation, without orders, without protocol demanding it, Thomas brought his hand to his forehead in a crisp, respectful salute. Not to William, not to Kate. To Charlotte, the little princess's face lit up with surprise and delight. She waved again, more enthusiastically this time. Thomas held his salute until the car passed, then returned to attention as if nothing unusual had occurred. But it was unusual, profoundly unusual. Before we continue with what happened next, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the rest of this incredible story. What Thomas did that day would change everything. Within an hour, the incident had been reported to the master of the household. By afternoon, Thomas was called into a private meeting with his commanding officer, Colonel Marcus Pemberton. The colonel's office was oak-paneled and heavy with tradition. Filled with portraits of guards who had served the crown for generations, Lieutenant Ainsworth, the colonel said, his voice carefully neutral. I need you to explain what happened this morning. Thomas stood at attention. Sir, I performed my duties as assigned. You refused to salute the Queen Consort. I did not refuse, sir. I simply did not salute. The colonel's jaw tightened. That's the same thing. With respect, sir, it's not. A refusal would be active disobedience. What I did was passive noncompliance. There's a difference in military law. The older man leaned back in his chair, studying Thomas with keen eyes. You're splitting hairs, Lieutenant, and you're smart enough to know it. The question is why. You have an exemplary record. 10 years of service. Never a single mark against you. So why now? Why her? Thomas remained silent, his gaze fixed on the wall behind the colonel's head. Is this political? The colonel pressed. Because if you're making some kind of statement about Queen Camilla's position, about her past, about public opinion, then you're crossing a line that will end your career. The King's Guard does not engage in politics. We serve the crown, not our personal feelings about who wears it. It's not political, sir. Then what is it? Thomas finally met the colonel's eyes. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. It's about loyalty, sir. Real loyalty. Not the kind that comes from protocol or tradition. The kind that has to be earned. The colonel's expression darkened. Queen Camilla is the king's wife. She holds her position legitimately. She doesn't need to earn anything from you. That's where we disagree, sir. The silence that followed was heavy and dangerous. The colonel stood slowly, walking to the window that overlooked the palace courtyard. Outside, tourists were still taking photos, still marveling at the spectacle of British tradition. They had no idea that inside these walls that tradition was being challenged in a way it hadn't been for decades. You saluted Princess Charlotte, the colonel said quietly. A child. Why? For the first time, Thomas's rigid posture softened slightly. Because she looked at me, sir. Really looked at me. Not at a uniform or a symbol. At me. And when I saluted her, her face showed something I haven't seen in a royal in a long time. Genuine surprise. like she wasn't used to being seen as special, like she didn't expect respect, she just hoped for it. "We don't serve based on sentiment, don't we, sir?" Thomas asked. "Isn't that exactly what the crown is built on? The sentiment of the people, their belief that the royals are worth serving? Take away that belief, and we're just men in fancy uniforms guarding fancy buildings." The colonel turned from the window, his face grave. "You're walking a dangerous path, Thomas. One that could cost you everything. I'm giving you an order right now. The next time Queen Camilla passes, you will salute. Is that understood?" Thomas stood perfectly still. Every instinct in him resisted, but he was a soldier. He knew how to follow orders, even ones he disagreed with. "Yes, sir," he said finally. "Understood." But as he left the colonel's office and returned to his post, Thomas knew something fundamental had shifted. He had drawn a line, and lines once drawn have consequences. What he didn't know was that Princess Charlotte had noticed his salute. She had asked her mother about it, and Kate, always observant, had seen something in that moment that troubled her deeply. The next morning, Thomas returned to his post outside Buckingham Palace. The tourists gathered again. The routine continued, but nothing felt routine anymore, and when Queen Camilla's car approached once more, Thomas faced the hardest decision of his military career. Thomas stood at his post, feeling the weight of every eye on him. The other guards knew what had happened yesterday. Word spread fast in the military. Some thought he was brave. Others thought he was a fool. Most thought he was both. Camilla's car approached at exactly 9:30, the same time as always. Through the tinted windows, Thomas couldn't see her face. But he imagined she was watching, waiting to see what he would do. His hand moved to his forehead, slowly, reluctantly. The salute was technically correct. But anyone who knew military bearing could see the difference. There was no crispness to it, no pride. It was the salute of a man following orders, not honoring royalty. The car passed. Thomas lowered his hand. He had obeyed, but the colonel was right. He was splitting hairs, and everyone knew it. What Thomas didn't see was the expression on Camilla's face inside that car. She had been watching, and she had seen exactly what that half-hearted salute meant. Her jaw tightened. Her hands clenched in her lap. She said nothing to her aide, but her silence spoke volumes. That afternoon, something unprecedented happened. Thomas received a summons, not from his commanding officer, not from the master of the household, from Princess Kate herself. The meeting was arranged quietly, in a private sitting room, away from the main palace. When Thomas entered, Kate was standing by the window, looking out at the gardens. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair loose. She looked like a mother, not a princess. "Lieutenant Ainsworth," she said, turning to face him. "Thank you for coming, Your Royal Highness." Thomas bowed slightly, uncertain of the protocol for this unusual situation. "Please, sit." Kate gestured to a chair. "This isn't a formal meeting. I wanted to talk to you about what happened yesterday." "With my daughter." Thomas sat carefully on the edge of the chair. "Ma'am, if I overstepped, you didn't," Kate interrupted gently. "Charlotte hasn't stopped talking about it. She asked me why you saluted her specifically. She wanted to know if it was because she did something special, or if you were just being kind." Thomas wasn't sure how to respond. Kate saved him the trouble by continuing. "I told her it was both. That sometimes people see something in us worth honoring, even when we don't see it ourselves. She's 9 years old, Thomas. She's growing up in a world that watches her every move, judges her every action. She already feels the weight of expectation. But yesterday, for just a moment, she felt seen. Really seen? And that matters more than you know." Thomas felt emotion tighten his throat. "She has something, ma'am. Something that can't be taught or faked. When she looked at me, there was kindness in her eyes, curiosity without entitlement. She didn't expect that salute. She was grateful for it. That's rare." Kate smiled sadly. "It is rare, especially in this family. We're raised to expect respect, to assume loyalty, to take service for granted. Charlotte hasn't learned that yet. I hope she never does." "With respect, ma'am, why are you telling me this?" Kate's expression grew serious. Because what you did yesterday and what you didn't do has started something. There are people in this palace who are very angry with you. They see your actions as disrespectful, as political, as a challenge to the crown itself. And what do you see it as? Kate met his eyes. Honest. That's what I see. You're being honest about something most people are afraid to admit, that respect isn't automatic, that titles don't guarantee loyalty, that the crown is only as strong as the people who believe in it. Thomas chose his words carefully. I mean, no disrespect to the king or to the institution, but Queen Camilla isn't Queen Elizabeth, Kate finished for him. That's what this is really about, isn't it? The comparison. The feeling that she hasn't earned the position she holds. Many people feel that way, ma'am. Many people do, Kate agreed. But most people aren't king's guards. Most people don't stand at attention outside Buckingham Palace representing the very loyalty they're questioning. You've put yourself in an impossible position, Thomas. And you've put the palace in one too. I'm sorry for any trouble I've caused. Are you? Kate asked, her tone sharper now. Because it doesn't seem like you're sorry. It seems like you've made a choice and you're willing to face the consequences. That's admirable. It's also incredibly dangerous. There are protocols in place for a reason. Once we start making individual decisions about who deserves respect and who doesn't, the entire system falls apart. Thomas felt the truth of her words, but he couldn't let go of what he'd seen. With respect, Your Highness, isn't the system already falling apart? Public support for the monarchy is at historic lows. People don't trust the institution the way they used to. Maybe that's because the institution has stopped caring about what people actually think and feel. Kate was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. You're not wrong. But you're not entirely right either. Change has to come from within. It has to be gradual, thoughtful, measured. What you're doing is throwing a match into dry timber. It might start a fire that burns everything down, or it might clear away the dead wood so something new can grow. Kate looked at him with something between respect and concern. You're playing a dangerous game, Lieutenant. One where you have very few allies and many powerful enemies. I'm not trying to make enemies, ma'am. I'm just trying to be honest. Honesty is expensive in this world, Kate said quietly. Especially here. I wanted to warn you personally because Charlotte likes you. Because I respect what you're trying to do, even if I don't agree with how you're doing it. But I can't protect you from what's coming. The decision has been made. You're being transferred. The words hit Thomas like a physical blow. Transferred. To where? Tower of London. Ceremonial guard duty. It's technically a lateral move, not a demotion. But everyone will know what it really is. A removal. A punishment. A message to every other guard that individual judgment isn't acceptable. Thomas felt his jaw tighten. When? End of the week. I'm sorry, Thomas. I pushed back against it. So did William. But there are forces at work here bigger than both of us. Queen Camilla has significant influence, and she wants you gone. She's afraid. Thomas said suddenly, the realization hitting him. That's what this is. She's not angry. She's afraid. Because if one guard can question her legitimacy publicly, others might too. And that threatens everything she's built. Kate didn't confirm or deny, but her silence was answer enough. As Thomas left the meeting, his mind raced. He had days left at Buckingham Palace. Days before he was moved to a post where he would guard history instead of royalty, where his service would become invisible. But he wasn't done yet. Because that evening, something happened that changed everything. Princess Charlotte, ever observant and far wiser than her years, did something completely unexpected. She wrote Thomas a letter, and what it said would force everyone to face the truth they'd been avoiding. The letter arrived at Thomas's quarters through official palace mail, which meant someone in Kate's office had helped deliver it. The envelope was simple cream-colored paper with careful handwriting that showed the effort of a child trying her best. Thomas opened it carefully and read, Dear Lieutenant Ainsworth, Mummy said you might be leaving soon. That makes me sad. You were very kind to salute me. Nobody ever salutes just me. They salute Daddy because he'll be king someday. They salute Mummy because she's important. But you saluted me because you wanted to, not because you had to. I asked Mummy why you didn't salute Queen Camilla. She said sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings about things. But I don't think it's complicated. I think you salute people you respect. And you can't make someone respect you. You have to earn it. Queen Camilla is nice to me sometimes. But she's not like Granny was. Granny always made me feel special, like I mattered. Queen Camilla makes me feel like I'm just another person she has to be nice to, because it's her job. I don't want you to get in trouble because of me, but I wanted to say thank you. For seeing me, for treating me like I was worth saluting, love. Charlotte Thomas read the letter 3 times, each reading making his chest tighter. A 9-year-old child had articulated what he'd been feeling but couldn't properly express. Respect couldn't be commanded. It had to be earned. And Charlotte, young as she was, already understood the difference between genuine care and dutiful politeness. He folded the letter carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. He wouldn't show it to anyone. It was too precious, too honest, and far too dangerous if it fell into the wrong hands. That night Thomas couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Charlotte's words, about Kate's warning, about the transfer that would remove him from Buckingham Palace in just 3 days. He thought about Queen Elizabeth, whom he'd served for 8 years before her death. She had possessed something indefinable, a presence that made you want to stand straighter, serve better, be more than you were. Camilla didn't have that. Maybe it was unfair to compare anyone to Elizabeth. Maybe Camilla was doing her best in an impossible role. But fairness didn't change feelings. And feelings, Thomas was learning, mattered more than protocol. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Thomas arrived for his shift to find the atmosphere outside the palace tense and unusual. Guards were speaking in hushed tones. Palace staff moved with urgent purpose. Something had happened. Colonel Pemberton appeared, his face grave. He pulled Thomas's aside, away from the others. "There's been a leak," the colonel said quietly. "The story about you and Queen Camilla, it's in the press. Every major paper. Social media is exploding. Someone told them what happened, and now it's a full-blown scandal." Thomas felt his stomach drop. "Sir, I know you didn't," the colonel interrupted. "But it doesn't matter. The damage is done. The headlines are brutal. Kingsguard refuses Queen Camilla. Royal snub at palace gates. Guard salutes Charlotte but not Camilla. Every outlet is running different angles. But they all make you look like a hero, and Queen Camilla look like someone unworthy of respect. That wasn't my intention." Intentions don't matter anymore, Thomas. The narrative is out there, and the palace is in crisis mode. The king himself is being asked to comment. Queen Camilla is reportedly devastated, and you're at the center of a media firestorm that's questioning the very legitimacy of the queen consort's position. Thomas felt the weight of consequences crushing down on him. What happens now? Now, the colonel's voice was grim. Now, the palace has to decide how to respond. They can court-martial you for insubordination, which turns you into a martyr and makes things worse. They can quietly transfer you as planned and hope the story dies, which makes them look weak. Or they can do something unprecedented. What's that, sir? They can tell the truth. Before Thomas could ask what that meant, a palace aide approached, breathless. "Colonel, the king requests Lieutenant Ainsworth's presence immediately. Private audience. No delay." Thomas felt his heart hammer against his ribs. A private audience with King Charles? This was either about to end very badly or very unexpectedly. 10 minutes later, Thomas stood in a private study he'd never entered before. The room smelled of old books and furniture polish. Portraits of past monarchs lined the walls, their painted eyes seeming to judge him. He was alone, waiting, every nerve on edge. The door opened. King Charles entered, and Thomas immediately bowed. "Your Majesty." "Sit down, Lieutenant," Charles said, his voice weary. "We need to talk. Man to man, not king to soldier." Thomas sat carefully on the edge of a chair. Charles remained standing, moving to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. For a long moment, he said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with complicated emotion. "You've created quite a mess, Lieutenant Ainsworth. Yes, your majesty. I apologize, don't, Charles interrupted, turning to face him. Don't apologize for something you meant to do. It's insulting to both of us. You made a choice. You knew what it would mean. And now, you're facing the consequences. The question is, do you understand why you made that choice? Or was it just instinct? Thomas met the king's eyes. It was both, sir. Instinct and understanding. Queen Elizabeth commanded respect naturally. I never had to think about saluting her. It was automatic, an honor. With Queen Camilla, it feels different. Forced. Like I'm playing a role rather than expressing genuine loyalty. Charles's jaw tightened, but he didn't look angry. He looked sad. Do you know what the hardest part of my life has been, Lieutenant? Not becoming king, not living up to my mother's legacy. It's been loving someone the world refuses to accept. Camilla has been by my side for decades. She's supported me through impossible times. She's earned my loyalty 1,000 times over. But she can't earn the public's loyalty. They won't let her. They're still comparing her to Diana, still angry about choices made 30 years ago, still determined to see her as the villain in a story that's far more complicated than anyone admits. Thomas felt the weight of the king's pain. Your Majesty, I'm not making a statement about Queen Camilla as a person. I don't know her personally, but as a symbol, as a representative of the crown, she doesn't measure up, Charles finished. That's what you're saying? And you're not alone in thinking it. Half the country thinks the same thing, but they're not king's guards. They don't stand outside this palace representing the institution while simultaneously undermining it. I'm not trying to undermine anything, sir, aren't you? Charles moved closer, his expression intense. You saluted my 9-year-old granddaughter with more reverence than you've shown my wife. You've drawn a line that says some royals are worthy and others aren't. Once you draw that line, where does it stop? Do the guards start deciding who deserves protection? Who deserves loyalty? Who deserves to live in this palace? The implications hit Thomas hard. The king was right. He had started something that could spiral beyond his control. Sir, Charlotte looked at me like I was a person, not a uniform. She saw me, and I wanted to honor that. With Queen Camilla, it feels like theater. Like we're all pretending something that isn't real. Charles was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down across from Thomas, suddenly looking older and more tired than his years. Let me tell you something about my granddaughter, Charles said softly. Something very few people know. Charles leaned forward, his voice dropping to something almost confessional. Charlotte is special. Not because she's royal, not because she's my granddaughter, but because she carries something rare. A quality my mother had. Diana had it too, though in a different way. It's an ability to make people feel valued, seen, human. Thomas listened, hardly daring to breathe. Last year, Charles continued, we attended a charity event. Very formal. Very structured. Charlotte was supposed to shake hands with a line of donors, smile politely, move along. Standard protocol. But there was an elderly woman in a wheelchair near the end. She'd been a nanny for the royal family decades ago. Nobody important anymore. Just an old woman who'd served quietly and been forgotten. Charles's eyes grew distant with the memory. Charlotte stopped in front of her. Really stopped. She knelt down so she was at eye level. She asked the woman's name, how long she'd worked for the family, if she missed it. And when the woman started crying, Charlotte held her hand until she stopped. The whole event had to pause. Schedules were disrupted, but Charlotte didn't care about schedules. She cared about that woman feeling important.
Oh, man.
Thomas felt his throat tighten. This was exactly what he'd seen in that brief moment. That quality of attention that made you feel like you mattered. That's not something I can teach her, Charles said. That's not protocol or training. That's who she is. And the world is going to try to take it from her. They're going to teach her to be efficient instead of empathetic, to be professional instead of personal, to think about schedules instead of people, the same way they tried to teach my mother and failed, the same way they succeeded with me. The admission hung in the air between them. Charles was acknowledging his own limitations, his own awareness that he lacked something essential. I don't have what Charlotte has, Charles said quietly. I know that. I've known it my entire life. I'm better at thinking than feeling. Better at understanding complex systems than reading human hearts. It's made me effective in some ways, but it's also made me less beloved, less natural, less like what people want a king to be, Your Majesty. Let me finish, Charles said, not unkindly. Camilla doesn't have it either. We're alike in that way. We're both people who think too much and feel too little in the ways that matter to the public. We're both aware we're not Diana, not Elizabeth. We know we're disappointing people just by existing, and there's nothing we can do about it except keep showing up. Keep trying, keep serving, and hope that eventually people see the value in consistency rather than charisma. Thomas understood now why he'd been summoned. This wasn't about discipline. It was about truth. The king was asking him to understand something fundamental about the impossible position he and Camilla occupied. The story is everywhere now, Charles continued. The guard who salutes Charlotte but not Camilla. The public loves it. They see it as validation of what they already believe, that Charlotte is special and Camilla isn't. That bloodline matters more than marriage. That you can't force people to respect someone they've decided not to accept. I didn't mean to start a public debate, sir. But you did. And now we have to address it. I've been advised to court-martial you. To make an example. Show that the king's guard serves the crown without personal judgment. But that would only make you a martyr. It would confirm everyone's belief that we're trying to force loyalty rather than earn it. What's the alternative? Charles met his eyes directly. The alternative is uncomfortable honesty. I'm going to make a public statement. I'm going to acknowledge that Queen Camilla holds a difficult position. That she's aware she's not universally accepted. That she doesn't expect automatic respect, but hopes to earn it over time through service. And I'm going to acknowledge that members of the King's Guard are human beings with personal feelings, not robots programmed to salute everyone equally. Thomas felt shock ripple through him. Your Majesty, that's unprecedented. So is what you did. We're in unprecedented territory now. The old rules aren't working. The public doesn't trust the crown the way they used to. They want authenticity. They want to know we're real people, not just symbols. Your action, whether you intended it or not, has created an opportunity. A chance to be honest about something we usually pretend doesn't exist. The gap between duty and genuine feeling. What happens to me? Charles stood, moving back to the window. You'll still transfer to the tower. That can't change. But it won't be framed as punishment. It will be framed as completing your service rotation. And I'm going to personally commend you for your years of dedicated service. That should soften the narrative. And Queen Camilla is hurt deeply, but she's also stronger than people give her credit for. She's survived decades of public hostility. One guard's reluctant salute isn't going to break her. If anything, this might help her. People are starting to feel sympathy. Starting to understand that she's trying to fill a role that was never meant for her, she never asked for, but that she's committed to anyway. I must process this carefully. You're using my mistake to humanize her. I'm using an honest moment to create honest dialogue, Charles corrected. Something this family desperately needs. My mother ruled through mystique. Through maintaining distance and perfection, that worked for her generation. It doesn't work now. People want to feel connected to their royals. They want to see struggle, vulnerability, humanity. You've accidentally given us that opportunity? Before Thomas could respond, there was a knock at the door. An aide entered, looking nervous. Your Majesty, Queen Camilla, is requesting to see Lieutenant Ainsworth. She's waiting in the green drawing room. Charles and Thomas exchanged looks. She wasn't supposed to be here, Charles said, frowning. This wasn't the plan. Should I refuse the meeting, sir? Charles considered, then shook his head. No, if Camilla wants to face this directly, that's her right. But Lieutenant, be careful. She's hurting, and hurt people can be unpredictable. 5 minutes later, Thomas stood in the green drawing room, a space he'd guarded countless times, but never entered. The walls were sage green silk, the furniture antique and elegant. Camilla stood by the fireplace, her back to him, her posture rigid. Your Majesty, Thomas said, bowing. Don't, Camilla said sharply, not turning around. Don't bow. Don't pretend. That's what this is all about, isn't it? The pretending. You're tired of pretending to respect me. So let's not pretend right now. She turned to face him, and Thomas saw that her eyes were red. She'd been crying. The public Camilla was always composed, always controlled. This woman looked raw and exhausted. Do you have any idea? She said, her voice shaking slightly. What it's like to know that half the country wishes you didn't exist. To walk into rooms and feel the disappointment. To see people look past you, hoping to see someone else, anyone else, in your place. Ma'am, I'm not finished, she interrupted. I've spent 20 years trying to earn a respect I know I'll never fully receive. I've done charity work. I've supported Charles. I've tried to be the person this role needs. And it's never enough. It will never be enough. Because I'm not Diana. I'm not Elizabeth. I'm just Camilla. And apparently, that's the worst thing I could possibly be. Thomas felt genuine sympathy cut through his resistance. This wasn't the queen consort speaking. This was a woman who was tired of fighting battles she couldn't win. Your Majesty, I didn't refuse to salute you because I think you're a bad person. I don't know you personally, but as a symbol I know, Camilla said, her voice dropping to something almost whisper quiet. I know what I represent. The other woman. The homewrecker. The one who destroyed the fairy tale? That's my legacy, isn't it? No matter what I do, that's what I'll always be. The vulnerability in her voice caught Thomas off guard. He'd expected anger, demands, royal displeasure. Not this exhausted honesty. I want to ask you something, Camilla continued, and I want you to answer truthfully. When you saluted Charlotte, was it because she's special, or because she's not me? Thomas felt the weight of the question. The honest answer would hurt. But Camilla had asked for truth, not comfort. Both, he said quietly. Charlotte is genuinely special. There's a quality in her that's rare. But I also saluted her because she represents something uncomplicated, innocent, pure. She hasn't made mistakes or compromises. She just is. And yes, that's easier to respect than someone with a complicated history. Camilla closed her eyes, absorbing the blow. When she opened them again, tears were streaming down her face. She didn't wipe them away. Thank you for being honest. Even though it hurts. Thomas felt his own throat tighten. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I never meant to cause you personal pain. This was never about you as a person. It was about what you represent. The institution. The compromises. The feeling that respect is being demanded rather than earned. But I am a person, Camilla said, her voice breaking. Behind the title and the crown and the protocol. I'm a person who made mistakes, who fell in love with the wrong man at the wrong time, who caused pain I can never undo. But I'm also a person who's trying. Every single day, I wake up and try to be worthy of this position I never wanted, but committed to anyway. And it's exhausting being judged every moment while knowing I'll never measure up. Thomas stood silent, not knowing what to say. This was the most vulnerable he'd ever seen any member of the royal family. The mask had completely fallen away. Charlotte is special, Camilla continued, wiping her tears now. I see it too. She has Diana's warmth and Elizabeth's strength. She's going to be extraordinary, and I know she's part of the family that will never fully accept me. Kate is polite but distant. William is civil but cold. The children are kind because they're children, not because they've chosen to be. I'm surrounded by family who tolerates me because Charles loves me, not because they want me there. Why are you telling me this? Thomas asked gently. Because you're leaving. Because this story is going to follow you, and I want you to know the truth. Not the public version. The real version. I'm not a villain. I'm not a saint. I'm just a woman who made complicated choices in complicated circumstances. And I'm tired of being punished for being human. She moved to a chair and sat down heavily, suddenly looking much older. When I married Charles, I knew what I was signing up for. The scrutiny, the comparison, the eternal second place to a ghost. I thought I could handle it. I thought love would be enough, but it's not. Love doesn't protect you from the weight of public opinion. It doesn't shield you from knowing that people wish you didn't exist. Thomas felt something shift in his perspective. He'd seen Camilla as a symbol, a representation of everything wrong with the modern monarchy. But sitting in front of him was just a tired woman carrying an impossible burden. "I don't expect you to salute me with joy," Camilla said quietly. "I don't expect genuine respect that hasn't been earned. But I do ask for basic courtesy. The kind of acknowledgement you'd give any human being trying their best in an impossible situation. Is that too much to ask?" "No, ma'am," Thomas said, and he meant it. "It's not too much to ask." Camilla met his eyes, searching for sincerity. She must have found it because she nodded slowly. "The king wants to make a public statement. Turn this into a moment of honesty. I've agreed, even though it terrifies me. Being vulnerable publicly goes against every instinct I have. But maybe he's right. Maybe honesty is the only path forward. What will you say?" "The truth. That I understand I'm not universally accepted. That I don't expect automatic respect. That I'm committed to earning whatever trust I can through consistent service and time. And that I forgive you for your hesitation, because I understand where it comes from." Thomas felt emotion wash over him. "You're forgiving me? What else can I do?" Camilla asked, a sad smile touching her lips. "Stay angry? Demand punishment? That would only confirm everyone's worst opinions of me. That I'm vindictive, entitled, unworthy of the position I hold. No, I choose forgiveness. Not because you deserve it necessarily, but because I refuse to be the villain everyone expects me to be." Before Thomas could respond, the door opened. Kate entered, followed by Charlotte. The little princess's eyes went wide when she saw Thomas, Lieutenant Ainsworth. She exclaimed, then caught herself, remembering her manners. "Hello, sir." "Your Royal Highness," Thomas said, bowing properly. Charlotte beamed at the acknowledgement. Kate's eyes moved between Thomas and Camilla, reading the room's emotional temperature. "I'm sorry for interrupting." Charlotte heard Lieutenant Ainsworth was in the palace and wanted to say goodbye before his transfer. "It's fine," Camilla said, composing herself quickly. "We were just finishing our conversation." Charlotte approached Thomas, her small face serious. "Are you leaving because of me? Because of my letter?" Thomas knelt down to her eye level, the same way she had with the elderly nanny. "No, Your Highness. I'm leaving because it's time for a new assignment. But I'm glad I got to meet you. You're going to do great things someday." "Mummy showed me what people are saying online," Charlotte said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "About you saluting me, but not Queen Camilla? People are being mean. I don't like it." "People are complicated," Thomas said gently. "They're not always fair. But that doesn't mean you should stop being kind. The world needs kind people more than it needs fair people." Charlotte considered this, then nodded seriously. She turned to Camilla. "I'm sorry people are mean to you too. You're not as warm as Granny was. But you're nice in your own way. You just need more practice, I think." Kate's eyes widened in horror at her daughter's blunt assessment. Camilla looked stunned. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. A real, genuine laugh that transformed her face. "Out of the mouths of babes," Camilla said, wiping her eyes again, though this time from laughter, not tears. "You're absolutely right, Charlotte. I do need more practice. Maybe you could help me? Teach me how to be warmer?" Charlotte brightened immediately. "I could. Mummy says I'm very good at making people feel special. It's easy. You just have to really look at them and ask questions, and remember what they say." "That does sound easy," Camilla said, though her tone suggested she knew it wasn't. "Perhaps we could have tea sometime. Just the two of us. And you could show me how it's done." Charlotte nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, and you could tell me stories about Grandpa when he was young? Nobody ever tells me those stories." Kate looked like she wanted to intervene, but something stopped her. Maybe she saw what Thomas saw? That this unexpected connection between Charlotte and Camilla could be important. That a 9-year-old's honest directness might accomplish what years of public relations couldn't. Thomas stood, feeling like he was witnessing something significant. The next generation reaching across the divide that separated the old guard from the new. Charlotte didn't carry the baggage of Diana's death or the scandal of Charles and Camilla's affair. To her, Camilla was just another adult who needed help learning to be warm. "I should go," Thomas said. "Let you all talk." "Wait," Camilla said, standing. She moved closer to Thomas, her posture formal again, but her eyes still carrying that vulnerability from moments before. "I want to thank you, Lieutenant, for your service, for your honesty, and for showing me, through your reluctance, that respect must be earned rather than expected. I intend to spend the rest of my time as Queen Consort trying to earn what you gave Charlotte so freely." She extended her hand, not for a formal handshake, but palm up, a gesture that suggested equality rather than rank. Thomas took her hand, and they stood there for a moment, as two people who had become symbols of a larger struggle finding unexpected common ground. "I'll salute you next time, ma'am," Thomas said quietly. "Not because I have to, because I want to. You've earned that today." Milla's eyes filled with tears again, but she smiled. "That's all I ever wanted. Not automatic loyalty. Just a chance to earn it." As Thomas left the green drawing room, he felt lighter than he had in days. The situation wasn't resolved. The public controversy would continue, but something fundamental had shifted. He had seen past the symbol to the human being, and that changed everything. The press conference was held 3 days later in the palace's stateroom. King Charles stood at a podium, Camilla beside him, both looking tired but determined. Thomas watched from a television in the guards' quarters, along with dozens of other guards who had been following the story with intense interest. "I want to address the recent incident involving Lieutenant Thomas Ainsworth and Queen Camilla," Charles began, his voice steady. "There has been much speculation, much judgment, much anger on all sides. I believe the time has come for honesty rather than spin, for truth rather than protocol." The room full of journalists leaned forward. This was unprecedented. Royals didn't acknowledge internal conflicts. They certainly didn't discuss them publicly. "Lieutenant Ainsworth is an exemplary soldier who has served the crown with distinction for 10 years, Charles continued. His hesitation to salute Queen Camilla was not insubordination. It was honest human reaction. And rather than punish him for that honesty, I want to thank him for it. Because he's shown us something important. That respect cannot be commanded. It must be earned. And my wife is the first to acknowledge that." Camilla stepped forward, her hands clasped in front of her. She looked nervous, but resolute. "I want to speak directly to the people of Britain," she said, her voice clear. "I know I'm not universally loved. I know my path to this position was controversial. I know many of you still mourn Princess Diana and feel I can never measure up to her memory. You're right. I can't. Diana was extraordinary, irreplaceable. I'm not trying to replace her. I'm just trying to serve." She paused, emotion evident on her face. "Lieutenant Ainsworth's reluctance to salute me hurt, but it also reminded me that titles don't create respect. Service does. Consistency does. Time does. I've been so focused on trying to seem worthy that I forgot to actually be worthy. That changes now. I commit to earning your respect through action rather than expecting it through position." Thomas felt his eyes sting. This was real, vulnerable, human. Everything the monarchy usually avoided. "As for Princess Charlotte," Charles said, and his expression softened, "Lieutenant Ainsworth recognized something special in my granddaughter. Something that transcends protocol and position. She has a gift for making people feel seen and valued. It's a quality we need more of in this family and in this institution." The lieutenant honored that quality with a salute that came from genuine respect rather than obligation. "I commend him for that." Charles looked directly at the camera. The monarchy survives not because of divine right or historical precedent. It survives because the people choose to support it. That support must be earned daily through service, humility, and honesty. Lieutenant Ainsworth reminded us of that truth. His actions, though controversial, have created an opportunity for important dialogue about what the modern monarchy should be. For that, he has my gratitude. The press conference continued with questions, but Thomas had heard enough. He turned off the television and sat in silence, processing what had just happened. The king had turned his mistake into a teaching moment. Camilla had transformed vulnerability into strength. And somehow, a story that should have destroyed careers had become a catalyst for change. His phone buzzed. A text from Kate. "Charlotte wants you to have this before you transfer. She insists." Attached was a photo. Charlotte had drawn a picture of Thomas in his red uniform, standing at attention with a massive smile on her face. Above the drawing, in careful handwriting, "Thank you for seeing me. I'll always remember you." Thomas saved the photo, feeling his throat tighten. This was why service mattered. Not for titles or ceremony, but for moments like this. For children who needed to feel valued. For queens who needed to be reminded they were human. For institutions that needed honest reflection. 2 days later, Thomas reported to the Tower of London for his new assignment. He expected to feel bitter about the transfer, about being removed from the prestige of Buckingham Palace. Instead, he felt strangely content. He had said something true. He had created change, and he had learned that respect flowed both ways. Even royals needed to earn it. His first day at the Tower, something unexpected happened. A royal visit was scheduled. Queen Camilla was coming to tour the crown jewels with a group of charity supporters. Thomas was assigned to the guard detail. When Camilla's car arrived, Thomas stood at attention with the other guards. His heart hammered as she approached. This would be the test. Would she ignore him? Acknowledge him? Use this as an opportunity to demonstrate her hurt? Camilla walked past the line of guards, greeting each one briefly. When she reached Thomas, she stopped. Their eyes met. He saw recognition there, and something else. "Understanding, Lieutenant Ainsworth," she said warmly. "I'm glad to see you settling into your new post. I hope you're finding the Tower's history as fascinating as Buckingham's." "Yes, ma'am." "Thank you, ma'am." Camilla leaned in slightly, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "I had tea with Charlotte yesterday. She's teaching me how to see people properly, as she puts it. Apparently I have a lot to learn, but I'm trying. That's all anyone can ask, ma'am." Camilla smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. Genuine warmth replacing practiced politeness. "Keep being honest, Lieutenant. The crown needs more people willing to tell uncomfortable truths. That's how we get better." She moved on, continuing her tour. Thomas returned to attention, but something fundamental had changed. He had saluted her when she approached, without hesitation, without reluctance, because she had earned it. Not through title or position, but through vulnerability and willingness to grow. The other guards noticed. Word would spread. The guard who refused to salute the queen consort had saluted her at the Tower, not because he was ordered to, but because he wanted to. That small gesture would matter more than any press conference or public statement. Weeks passed. Thomas settled into his new routine. The Tower was different from Buckingham Palace. Less prestigious, perhaps, but rich with history. He found himself giving impromptu history lessons to tourists, sharing stories of the Tower's 1,000-year legacy. It was meaningful work, even if it wasn't glamorous. One afternoon he received a visitor. Colonel Pemberton appeared, looking uncomfortable but determined. "May I have a word, Lieutenant?" They walked along the Tower's walls, overlooking the Thames. The colonel was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "I owe you an apology. When this all started, I saw you as a problem, a disruption. Someone putting personal feelings above duty. I was wrong." Thomas looked at him in surprise. "Sir, you were right about respect needing to be earned," the colonel continued. "I've been in the military my entire adult life. I've followed orders, enforced protocol, maintained tradition, but somewhere along the way, I forgot why those things matter. They matter because they serve something larger than themselves. When they stop serving that purpose, when they become empty ritual, they need to be questioned." "I didn't mean to cause problems, sir."
"I know."
"But you did cause change." Queen Camilla has been different since the press conference. More engaged, more genuine. She's actually connecting with people now instead of just going through motions. And it's because you forced her to confront an uncomfortable truth. That's valuable. That's leadership." The colonel handed Thomas an envelope. Inside is a commendation for exceptional service, not for following protocol, but for demonstrating the courage to question it when necessary. The kind of courage that makes the institution better, rather than just easier. Thomas opened the envelope, reading the formal commendation. His eyes widened. It was signed by King Charles himself. "There's also a transfer offer in there," the colonel added. "Back to Buckingham Palace, if you want it. Different position. More responsibility. Training new guards. Teaching them the balance between duty and judgment. The king thinks you'd be good at it." Thomas looked out over the river, thinking about everything that had happened. The mistake that became a moment. The reluctance that sparked dialogue. The honesty that created change. "I need to think about it, sir," he said finally. "The tower is growing on me. There's something peaceful about guarding history rather than making it." The colonel smiled. "Take your time. The offer stands whenever you're ready. Just know that you've already made more impact than most guards make in entire careers. Whether you come back or not, you've changed how we think about service. That's no small thing." After the colonel left, Thomas stood on the tower walls, watching the sun set over London. He thought about Queen Elizabeth, who had served with such grace for so long. He thought about Camilla, learning to be vulnerable in public. He thought about Charlotte, who already understood that the best kind of power was the power to make others feel valued. He pulled out his phone and looked at Charlotte's drawing again. The guard with the big smile. The princess who felt seen. A moment of genuine connection in a world of ceremony and protocol. Thomas smiled. He had come to the King's Guard expecting to serve symbols. Instead, he had discovered that the best service meant seeing past the symbols to the humans underneath. Queens who needed forgiveness. Princesses who needed recognition. Kings who needed honesty. The next morning, Thomas wrote his response to the transfer offer. He would return to Buckingham Palace. Not because he sought prestige, but because he had learned something worth teaching. That loyalty wasn't blind. That respect wasn't automatic. That the crown stayed strong. Not by demanding service, but by earning it. 3 months later, Thomas stood in the same corridor where everything had started. He was training a new group of guards, young men and women eager to serve. They looked at him with respect and curiosity, knowing his story, wondering what he would teach them. The most important thing about being a King's Guard, Thomas told them, isn't the uniform, or the tradition, or the ceremony. It's understanding what you're really protecting. Not buildings, not crowns, not even people. You're protecting an idea. The idea that leadership should serve rather than demand. That power comes with responsibility. That respect flows both ways. He paused, making eye contact with each trainee. You will guard royals who inspire you, and royals who disappoint you. Royals who feel worth serving, and royals who don't. Your job isn't to judge them, but it is to be honest about how you feel, because that honesty keeps the institution grounded. It reminds everyone involved that service is a privilege that must be earned, not a right that can be demanded. Carr approached. Through the window, Thomas saw Camilla. She saw him too. She smiled and gave a small wave. Thomas saluted crisply, pride and genuine respect in the gesture. She nodded in acknowledgement, understanding the significance of that freely given salute. Behind her car, another vehicle approached. Charlotte pressed her face against the window, grinning when she saw Thomas. He saluted her too, with the same respect, the same recognition of something special. The trainees watched this exchange carefully. They didn't know the full story yet, but they would learn it. They would learn that service meant seeing people as humans first and royals second. That tradition mattered, but humanity mattered more. That the crown's greatest strength was its willingness to grow and change and admit imperfection. As the cars disappeared into the palace, Thomas turned back to his trainees. Remember, he said, we don't serve perfect people. We serve real people trying their best in impossible circumstances. That's harder. But it's also more meaningful, because when you see someone struggle and still show them respect, that's when respect actually means something. The trainees nodded, beginning to understand. They had signed up to serve symbols. Thomas was teaching them to serve humans. And in that difference lay the future of everything the crown represented. The sun broke through the London clouds, casting light on the ancient palace stones. Thomas Ainsworth, the guard who had refused to salute and sparked a revolution, smiled. He had learned the most important lesson of all, that sometimes the most loyal thing you can do is demand that loyalty be earned. That respect given freely means more than respect commanded. And that the crown's greatest strength was its ability to learn from those who served it honestly. The monarchy would survive, not because of tradition alone, but because people like Thomas, Camilla, Charlotte, and countless others were willing to tell the truth, to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, and in that willingness to change lived the real magic of the crown. Not perfection, but persistent humanity. Not divine right, but earned respect. Not blind service, but conscious choice. Thomas returned to his duties, training the next generation of guards, teaching them that the uniform was just cloth, that the ceremony was just theater, that what mattered was the human heart beating beneath it all, choosing every day to serve something larger than itself. That was the real story, not about a salute refused or given, but about the courage to see people truly, to honor what deserved honoring, and to build a future where respect was earned through character rather than commanded through title. The king's guard stood tall, the crown endured, and somewhere in the palace, a 9-year-old princess smiled, knowing that she had been seen, valued, and remembered, just as she would remember to see value and honor others when her time came to serve. The circle continued. The lessons passed forward, and the monarchy, ancient and ever-changing, adapted once more to the truth that had always sustained it. That power without humanity is tyranny. That service without respect is slavery. That crowns without consent are just expensive hats. But crowns worn by humans who admitted their flaws, learned from their critics, and earned loyalty through consistent service. Those crowns could last forever. Thomas saluted the morning, the palace, the institution he had challenged and ultimately strengthened, and in that salute lived everything the king's guard was meant to be: protector, questioner, teacher, servant, human.